Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, CEO Neil Sweeney of Reklaim Inc. Reklaim is giving consumers access and compensation for their data. They aspire to be the destination that consumers visit to reclaim control of their online data. They empower consumers to take back control of their identity. There are three pillars to Reklaim. Reklaim Rewards, where you can get compensated for your data. Reklaim Protect, which they just launched for $1 a month. They let you know if you've been through any data breaches, they remove you from the dark web, and they remove you from data brokers. Then there's soon to be Reklaim Invest, but I'm going to let Neil tell you more about that in just a moment. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a follow-up interview to Reklaim. Got Neil Sweeney, one of my favorite CEOs here. He's my brainiac whenever it comes to data and all that kind of stuff. Software. He's just a fascinating guy to talk to. Neil, you look like you're hanging out in a pretty nice area right now.
I'm north of the border up in Canada, being one with nature here. I'm in a part of southwestern Ontario called Grand Bend, which my family's had a place up here for a while. So on the weekends and when I need to kind of do lots of work with no distraction, this is a good place to do it.
So you just had an earnings report where the company seems to be humming along nicely, and the market rewarded you handsomely with the, oh no, wait a minute, that didn't happen. You did have a nice report, and you did send out a nice letter to the shareholders, kind of giving people a little insight into your path or your vision for the company, right? And I thought it would be good to have you on because you got a couple of exciting things. I think exciting things that are potentially percolating or developing. You want to. Where do you want to start? I'm going to let you take it.
I mean, let's start on the quarter and let's start because we've kind of had two things in the last, you know, I guess 3 or 4 weeks. So we had the Q4 2024 financials come out, and then we had the Q1 financials come out shortly thereafter. And that's always it's a positive and a negative. The one thing is to get the 24 financials out is always a bit of a labor intensive process because it requires the audit, which sort of slows you down. The one thing though about kind of once you actually put out the 24 financials, you're already into 25. So you actually have some visibility as to how the new year is going. But I always find it a bit surprising where, you're reflecting back on kind of numbers that are 3 to sort of 6 months old. And that's like dog years for me. Like that's like really a long time ago. But 24, just the summary on 24, which I encourage the viewers to look at is, we had another profitable year in Q4 and 24. So we're stacking consecutive profitable years. This company in 24 grew 25+%, had 80% margins, generated free cash flow, made money, expanded, its overall size of the business, etc. So I think we checked a lot of boxes on that. And I think that it's difficult to even have in a profitable quarter, never mind multiple quarters, but then multiple profitable years. And so I think there's a bit of validation in the market for people who are like, let's see if this company can continue to do what it says it's going to do. We've done that. Q1 was kind of more of the same. Q1 was up 77% or 73% year over year on the quarter. Same idea. Generating free cash flow, 80+% margin. So a lot of really good things. And I think our whole philosophy on this business, and we can kind of talk about the micro cap or the small cap market, is um, profitable and predictable. And that's really kind of what we focus on. And so if you're looking for a high growth small cap company that actually makes money and doesn't burn cash, we're on the short list of the companies that actually do that. So that's been good. And then in the Q1 announcement, we also put out, we launched a new product to go along with our core product. And at Reklaim, just so everybody understands, at Reklaim, it's a platform originally where you can reclaim your data from the open internet, put it into an interface or an application controlled by you, and then sell it and receive compensation or a royalty every time it's used. So the philosophy has always been about trying to give consumers a seat at the table as it relates to their data. That's the business that's been growing and has been profitable. In Q1, we actually launched a new version of Reklaim, which is called Reklaim Protect. And that is specifically for individuals who don't really want to sell their data. They'd like to see their data and reclaim it, but rather than sell it, they'd like to have it protected, removed, and monitored for dark web for dark web breaches and hacks. What I've always kind of known about this business is that there's very distinct personas of consumers. You have some consumers who would like to, monetize their data for as much money as possible. That is a very unique kind of persona. Naturally, there's a lot of people who are, and a lot of them are investors, candidly, who actually don't want to sell the data, but are very interested in things like privacy and data protection. Reklaim in its original form didn't really have a solution for that second persona. Call that the idealist. With Reklaim Protect, we're actually satisfying that persona. We're adding that persona to our total addressable market. I'm biased, but what I think is interesting is that what is the market size of individuals that would like to sell their data? And then what is the market size of people that want to protect their data? You and the viewers can decide as to which one you think is bigger. This is a $1 trillion market. We already know that. So if you think this market is bigger, your benchmark is $1 trillion. I tend to believe that this market is probably bigger, increasingly more so. So what we've done here is we've added a fully accretive business to our existing model that's growing, 50+%. That is also high margin. It's a subscription product, so it's a reoccurring kind of SaaS-based revenue line, and we're pretty excited about that. So I'll pause there because I'm conscious of kind of just rambling on, but hopefully that frames.
You guys are really making a killing on that fee too for that protect. It's like I couldn't even believe it. Actually, I signed up for it. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so my theory on this one is like, so it's $1 a month, $10 a year. I mean, inevitably that price is going to go up. But when you launch product, where entrepreneurs get cute is they get cute on pricing. And what I think everybody would agree with, what's more important, share or price? And I don't mean stock share, I mean market share. You want users and you want consistent users to generate data and insight on your product. So your pricing shouldn't really restrict people from getting the product. If you don't want to come into this product because you believe $1 too much, like you're not right for like Protect, right? I think we can kind of agree on that. But price shouldn't be the barrier for people to get into the product. And then once you get a subset of people in, those people get grandfathered into that price. And then ultimately what you end up doing is then you raise the price and anybody net new comes in and actually pays for that. But the other thing too is that we're adding additional components to Protect. Just think of it as a sandwich. We're just stacking more and more value, where as you add more and more value to the product, the price point becomes less and less of a concern, right? So this product's been out 2 weeks. Right now, what we did is we launched it as a service to people that have Reklaim proper or like the compensation model, because we had signal from the people inside of Reklaim that upwards to 20% of those people wanted this type of privacy product, meaning They wanted to sell their data and protect it because you can technically be in both. Now what we're doing is we're breaking it off specifically for those people that don't want to be part of kind of the Reklaim historical business. And there's some benefits associated to that because one, we can direct, if Tim wants to just join Reklaim Protect, I can send him directly to Reklaim Protect website, application, whatnot. You can sign up, and we don't have the same kind of restrictions as we have on the last business, on the other business. So things like breaking it off as a standalone that's going to happen in the next kind of couple of weeks, which will allow us to be more aggressive in adding people to it. We're also going to launch it internationally. So Reklaim is really only available, Reklaim proper, or the original business, is only available in Canada and the United States. Reklaim Protect can technically be a global product because security and data breaches and dark web monitoring is a problem in every country around the world, and it's only going to get worse. So I like the idea of kind of taking the governor off of that, that engine and letting it rip kind of across multiple jurisdictions. So we should have the standalone / internationalization of that done by the end of this quarter. So in the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks. And right now in Protect, you go through these kind of 3 hops. One, we remove you from what's referred to as people finder sites. These are terrible places where, you can actually like look up like your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend information. It's terrible. The fact that it's even remotely legal is bonkers. So we remove you from all these places. That's the first hop. Then we remove you from all the data brokers. These are thousands of companies that are amalgamating your data, selling it unbeknownst to you, and like you're basically a free input that they're arbitraging for cash.
Did you guys actually send out a notification saying we're removing you from such and such, right?
Yeah. And so for each of them, the people
Yep.
finder sites, then the brokers, and then the last is there's certain states have what's referred to as broker registries. So we've ingested the entire registry and are going company by company to actually have you removed from, each and every one of those companies. So again, like in California, there's probably 5,000 companies on that list.
And
So
do you know of anybody else that, like, let's say, I don't know, like Norton or McAfee, or do they do that?
yeah, different companies do different pieces of this. I mean, most of those products are sort of $7, $8, $9, $10. And they do kind of different things. Like they'll do dark web monitoring or they'll do some. But we haven't seen a lot of them doing kind of broker and data removal. So we feel like we're ahead of that. So I think that that's a good thing. And, for us as well, like we built an AI privacy bot kind of on
I
the
was
back
just going to
of it.
ask: is AI is there an AI component to this?
Yeah, so as part of it, you get access to this bot where, if you're involved in a breach, you can communicate with the bot as to how to like remediate that or actually how to protect it. Or if have questions around the companies or the brokers that you've been removed from, you can ask the bot about it. It can do a privacy assessment on you. It can give you, visibility on how to improve like your overall security, password managers, etc. So I think like again, similar to, we're kind of talking a little bit about my product roadmap stuff, but we've already built this. Like we built this on Llama. It's very powerful actually. And I think what you're seeing right now is we actually kind of spent a lot of time building that first before we built the connection, before we built the kind of the version for Reklaim proper. What's happening now is the stitching between these two is getting refined. So you'll see that being a much bigger component of Protect. And that's something that those other companies don't do at all right now.
So I want to make sure we hit another piece here, because so currently the way it works is you sign up for these things, you collect points, then you claim those points and you build up your points, and eventually you can buy a cup of coffee or whatever.
Correct.
Or
Yeah.
you can just let them build up and let them build up, right? And that is the reclaim. That's the, I guess, the initial product, which was reclaim, not protect, but what was it?
Yeah. So that was Reklaim. And I think like what you're hitting on right now
Reclaim,
is
right?
how do you delineate between kind of the original business and Protect? So what's happening now is that original business is kind of quietly being rebranded as Reklaim Rewards, so
Okay.
that there's a very clear distinction between Reklaim Rewards equals compensation, whereas Reklaim Protect equals deletion and protection, right?
And then
So
and you're doing like weekly jackpot things now. Yes?
yeah, so I mean, this is the other, like we're doing a couple things. We're doing a jackpot component. So there's protect, there's what we call jackpot, and then there's what we call invest. So I'll kind of speak to all three of these quick. Well, I won't speak to protect because I just did that. But like the jackpot we've been running that now for I guess for quite a while. There's a weekly jackpot that runs in the United States, where rather than, if we'll use round numbers. If you have $5 in your account today inside of Reklaim Rewards, you can actually redeem that into your PayPal account or take a gift card, or you can gift it away if you'd like. That's transactional, right? So there's no inherent upside associated to that. A lot of people really like it because it's consistent. What we've done is we've created a jackpot where rather than actually have that $5 redeemed, you can actually pledge it into a jackpot. And the $5 gives you $5. Every penny is kind of worth a point or a vote. You go
Mm-hmm.
into a larger jackpot. And so I put my five in, you put your five in, the total jackpot's 10, one of us wins it. Great. Um, we built that because one, it's a little less transactional, and sort of secondly, because we believe that the psychology is well kind of document that people would forego the guarantee of a smaller amount for the chance of a larger amount. And so by positioning it this way to say, would you rather, take out your $5 this week or be in the $10,000 jackpot? A large percentage of people would prefer to be in the $10,000 jackpot. And
Right.
the more people that participate, the jackpot can go up. So um, that's a component of Reklaim Rewards that has been running for a little while. I would not, I would not bet against that becoming kind of increasingly a larger kind of piece of Reklaim Rewards, but that's something that we feel pretty strongly about, and we have a lot of data on, and we've been iterating on, but we've we've kind of been letting that run on autopilot because the last quarter we've been really focused on Protect. And um, the other piece that we've been working on, which if the investors or the viewers have been kind of reading our press releases, like all this information is public. So I'm not kind of giving anything out that is like that we haven't kind of spoken about or isn't available in the product today. Um, People ask me like, hey, I saw at the bottom of your press release that, in a disclosure component, you gave, a certain number of users, shares in the company rather than having them redeem in cash. Um, we call that Reklaim Invest. And, I'm pretty excited about this product. It's a closed beta that we've been running specifically in Canada, where individuals inside of Reklaim Canada can forego the redemption rail of taking that $5 out or the $10 out, and they can have it pledged towards actually receiving shares in the company in the same way that you would in a dividend reinvestment plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So rather than get the dividend from AT&T, you have the dividend reinvested into the company. It's a dollar cost averaging technique with no fees. What I'm particularly excited about this is that I think it changes the psychology of Reklaim dramatically. I just think that you go from a situation where you're selling your data to investing in yourself. And, we have all the regulation approvals associated to doing this. I like to say it's kind of like a public market DAO, where individuals are forgoing this cash and instead taking shares in the company, which is creating influencers and evangelists. Because if you're taking shares in the company, you're probably not going to go into the market and just sell them because you're choosing to dollar cost average here. We like that because the more people have stock, the more people that talk about the stock. And what I've always been fixated on here has been this idea of we have investors and then we have kind of users of Reklaim. Users of Reklaim are not necessarily investors, and investors are not necessarily users of Reklaim. If we can take these two individuals and make them one and the same, is there a compounding where every user of Reklaim is an investor of Reklaim? I think that's cooking with gas. I do. I just think that you get this
I
enormous
think that
amount.
I think this is one of the most exciting ideas I've seen come out of a small cap company, and I can't tell you how long.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's early. Like we don't have a path to do it in the US yet. I'm working on it. And everybody was like, "Oh, we have to do it in the US." I'm like, "Look, let's I have approval to do it. I'm the only company in the world that's ever been approved to do it. Period. So, like, I have approval to do it. We've been doing it, and we've been operationalizing this now inside of the Canadian version of the product. Where, again, this is that in order to receive shares in a company, you have to go through a series of documents and checks and stuff. We built all that. That's all done. We built it into the product. Where now when you click a box to basically automatically subscribe to have your points moved into shares, um all the documentation, the equivalent of like a DocuSign, it's all there where boom, and then there's a DRS transfer that happens and you've got it. Like it's all done. So it's been operationalized, and like any product, the first time you do it, it's kind of clunky. The second time, it's inherently more efficient, and you're getting kind of better and better at it. And so, my kind of position internally was, you don't need to push it to the US right now because you're still operationalizing the product, and operationalize the product and make sure that it actually is checking the boxes and kind of doing what you want it to do. Each time we've done it, we've had more users. So more users are sort of subscribing to it. And I'm like, again, these are little signals that it's working. And so again, this is something we've been doing. It's live. Like this isn't new information. But between kind of now and I would say in the next like few weeks, we'll actually officially we'll say we'll take it out of the beta, and then we'll kind of say, hey, like, Reklaim is doing shares for redemption or points for shares. And we'll see what that does, because that should probably bring, new individuals to the product who are not coming in. So it's very similar to Protect, who are not coming in to sell their data, who are coming in to accumulate shares and Reklaim. So when you zoom out here, the best way to think about this is that, we built this business with Reklaim as the kind of the core brand, and we were working on that business for, the past half a dozen years. That business continues to make money, but we've introduced these new iterations of the product. And so underneath now this kind of Reklaim brand, we've had to kind of create sub brands. And the way it will look is it will be Reklaim Rewards, Reklaim Invest, and Reklaim Protect, all running up to the overarching Reklaim brand. And when you apply the personas that we talked about, the idealist who cares about privacy goes on Protect. The individual who is focused on monetization goes on to Rewards / and or the jackpot. And then the person who is more interested in investing in themselves is going to go on kind of Reklaim Invest. And what I like about Invest is that, as I said before, is that it's that idea of invest in you. Reklaim you and invest in you is symbiotic. Those two things are kind of very similar. And this idea of no fee accumulation of shares really almost moves that part of the Reklaim product into a fintech, where now all of a sudden you have a lot of different things like, do we want to, provide this product to other public companies? Do we want to allow consumers to add cash to their account to buy more shares? Do we want to allow consumers to buy other stocks? There's a lot of different things that we can do. Like, it's early days, and like by far and away, the thing that we want to do is we want to take the initial beta of shares for invest or points for shares, and I'd like to figure out a way to get it into the US. That's kind of my goal. So we're doing some revs on it in Canada with the intention to do it in the US, and then we'll see what happens. But like, I think your kind of comment about like the share price, this is the thing about small cap, is that your profitability and your earnings and whatever, that will pop up on screeners. But, there's 13,000+ companies on the OTC. Like if you as an investor are not taking time to like watch these videos and understand what's happening with the company, you're going to look at a very simple chart on Apple News or on Yahoo. And do you think that encapsulates what we just talked about for the last 10 minutes? The answer is no. And so look, it's a great, it's frustrating for the founder. You get used to it, but it should be exciting for the investor, because the investor's like, this is a huge opportunity for us to like participate in the growth of this company. And like the reality is most people are just not going to do the work to actually figure this out. These types of conversations are about providing the context and vision to go on top of the financial statement that people, kind of put a cursory look at. And I think as more and more people understand, look, we know what we're doing. Like we've been doing it for a while, and and when they start to see like, wow, like this thing has got like a lot of hops to go, that's hopefully maybe it'll evolve. But if it doesn't, doesn't matter to us. We don't need to raise a bunch of money to keep the lights on here. We just keep working.
So let's talk about the raising. Let's talk about you potentially have some warrants that could actually trigger, right? And isn't that like in June? Is that's
What's that?
what's that?
What was that question?
Warrants?
Oh
Yes.
yeah, so that's a big one. So yeah, like we have 24 million warrants that are going to expire at the end of June.
Okay.
They are in the money at 10 cents Canadian. The stock's currently at 8.5 to 9 cents. The stock's been as high as whatever, 20. There is a possibility that they exercise. So in one extreme, you have $2+ million in cash coming into this business by the end of June. We call that a champagne problem around here, right? Which is like we don't need the 2 million, but we'll find a good home for it if it does come in. The other extreme is that the stock price doesn't cooperate and the 24 million warrants expire. That's also a champagne problem. The champagne problem is, well, you're not getting 2 million in cash, but your cap table looks a lot better because now all of a sudden those things are now no longer there. Some, I'm not sure I'm one of them, believe that that's an overhang on the stock. We'll see. I'm not sure about that. There's the middle ground, though, where the stock cooperates and a subset of those warrants actually come in. And I think, like, let's just use again round numbers. I don't know, $1 million comes in. Well, you get the best of both worlds if that happens because the cap table shrinks because only a subset actually came in. But then you have an extra $1 million in cash on the profitable cash flow positive business. What would you do with the business? Well, we probably retire, the debenture slash, loan that or the debt that we have, of which I'm the main guy. Does that unlock, a headwind for the actual company, knowing that that's now gone too? So in that case, the warrant's gone and now the debenture's gone. It should clear the path for people that have potential concerns about that. I don't think you should have concerns about that, but whatever. Everybody's got their own decisions. So we'll see. But I think the combination of, what we've been doing here in Q4 and in Q1, as well as with, some of the announcements around Protect and, shares for invest, like we'll see. Maybe the stock will cooperate, maybe it doesn't, but, we're good either way. But we have a plan for all three of those scenarios, depending upon what happens.
Look, so I can tell you straight up from people that I have shown this company to that yes, the debt they have an issue with. I can tell you
Most
that.
of them don't know it's me, though. That's the thing.
No, they know it. No, they know it's you. And if I'm not mistaken, what's the percentage rate that it's at? Is it 12?
Yeah.
Is it 12?
Yeah. 12.
Yeah. So I know for a fact, at least for one specific individual, it was an issue, right? But this guy is so I can tell you that yes, there will be people that will, if that goes away, will absolutely be happy and probably get involved in the stock, right? Uh,
We're working on it. We're working on it. We're working on it.
everybody's got their own thing, Neil. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
So I know for a fact that one person, yes, that will probably be the thing that gets them to jump into the stock. So I think I think what you're saying is whether they all come in or a portion of them come in, you're right. Those are champagne problems to have, right? I mean, this is not a win-lose scenario. To me, it's a win-win no matter what happens, right? They either expire and go away, or you take care of. I mean, we'll see what happens, but what I really love more than anything is this investing. I mean, it's got me because I think about it, and if you can get this done in the United States, then you're building the software that has all the forms and all the stuff in it. Could you not then take it to other companies that are out there that and say, hey, why don't you try this for your investors?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's on the plan. That's part of the plan. I think what you can appreciate is that when you take that kind of fulfillment and you lift up all the rocks, like if you looked at the flow chart of what that looks like, individual has whatever $10, they want to actually move that into a share, and like step by step, everything single thing that needs to happen. It needs to be price reservation, reserve, like treasury direction, DRS transfer, TSX disclosure. Like, first of all, if it's your first day in the public market, you're going to get run over if you try. Like, one, you can't do it if you're not public, and two, you can't do it if your model doesn't exist to support it, and thirdly, like, it's not a trivial thing. Um, yeah, so look, we've built all those components for sure. And I think that it looks promising. Like, it definitely looks promising, but we'll see if we can. The intention here is what became very clear is you're taking 60, 80, 100 years of kind of capital markets bureaucracy
Yep.
and really operationalizing it into digital. That's what you've done. You basically digitized like almost the equivalent of like a debt to equity transfer
Yep.
amongst thousands of individuals simultaneously. Not bad. Like, but it looks it's not a trivial task. It's because every institution, every jurisdiction, everybody's kind of it's always a little every step of the way is something different. And so you
Yep.
got to map it all out and be like, okay, well, we can code that, skip that, replace that, like, and then you kind of shrink it to streamline it. And so, yeah, like, every public market CEO complains about the same stuff regarding the bureaucracy of, this. And if you can roll it in there and say, look, this should be part of your IR
No,
strategy.
I look at some how it could impact certain things like naked shorting, right? I mean, I I I I think that this thing has got if you can get this done in the US, man, I think it changes things in a
Oh,
big way. It just
I
I
don't have a path there yet. That's
I know you
I don't.
don't, but I'm praying because you know me. I mean, I am all about small businesses. I am all about the companies that are trying to build things that are going to make things better for humanity in some small way, right? And there are a lot of small companies that are trying and are succeeding at tackling these things, and nobody knows about them. Nobody, because they're a little microcap company, and the funds are too big. They can't even look at them because their fund is $10 billion fund, and they invest as a percentage of their portfolio. What's a $10 billion fund going to do with a $60 million market cap company? Nothing, right?
Yeah,
It's not possible.
yeah.
So I see it all the time, and then then unfortunately, and you said it kind of at the beginning of this thing, then you get into the predatory lending and good companies, man, disappear because that have good products because the capital markets are not efficient for small cap companies. They're just not. There's a lot
Hmm.
of unbalanced, unfair stuff that happens. And if you can come up with a product that that somehow makes it a little more challenging for them to do the same cookie cutter approach to these financings and all this stuff, man, where it's I think it's criminal. Uh, we'd have some companies that would be around longer and hopefully become successful and change the world in a better way in a bigger way.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think small caps tricky for sure, and it's really tricky if you need capital. And so it's almost like a rite of passage, I'd say, for almost every company and CEO who's operating in small cap. Like you get conditioned that it's all about growth and top line and raising money and IR. That's kind of a cocktail that is that gets
I
presented
mean,
to the.
how cool would it be if you had your thing and I could add cash to my whatever, right? So to buy shares, just right, almost like a private placement kind of, right?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the idea, right? So there's the components of it are similar to that. Like in a private placement, you're basically doing the equivalent of an individual, share transfer, right? You put
Yep.
money in,
Which you
and
can't do unless you're an accredited investor, by the way.
it depends on which market you're in, right?
Right.
So that's the differences between the Canadian and the US markets, right? So again, every market's sort of slightly different. Is that
Mhm.
the distinction for what constitutes an accredited investor in the United States versus what constitutes an accredited investor in Canada? The exchanges are different, right? So when we went, like part of the reason we went down this, but there's also other limitations in Canada. Like there's no central exchange, there's no central authority in Canada, where Canada is comprised of like 13 different jurisdictions, which represents the various different provinces, etc. So they all have their own kind of laws. It'd be like in the US, every individual state, you'd have to file in each individual state. This is an antiquated, like ridiculous legacy thing in Canada. So that's a flaw of the Canadian capital markets. But there's also components of the Canadian capital markets that are positives. So this is sort of the operational process where you can't take what you can do in Canada and apply it to the US. Doesn't, like, they just don't, it's a Venn diagram where a subset lines up, but the majority doesn't. And then you have to kind of take a look at the US market and be like, well, what can we do here, and versus like what can we do in Canada that we can do in the United States? This, and this. What can we do in Canada that we can't do in the United States? This, and this. And what like is completely fundamentally different. So the first stuff you can just say, oh, we can do all that. Like now we're starting to figure out what are the differences between sort of these other kind of components. So I mean, look, I'm pretty good at kind of doing stuff that others haven't. And so the idea of, well, no one's ever done it before is like, yeah, that's not the first time we've heard that. So what I like about it is, the more difficult it is, the more unique it is, and the bigger the moat. So we're not just we're not discouraged by complexity or the fact that no one's done it. I just think that there's an opportunity there for sure. And we're using kind of Canada right now to kind of figure out as much of it we can live. And then we'll see how much of it we can apply to the US, and that which we can't, we'll change and alter. But right now, like I'd bet on us figuring a way to do it in the
Let,
United
let,
States.
let me ask you this: have you ever had a publicly traded company or any company where you built it and then sold it?
Well, yeah, the predecessor of this company was sold, right? So that's part of the reason why we built that. And then the company before that was sold, and the company before that was sold. So like commercializing or incubating new ideas and then commercializing them and scaling them, it like that's kind of what we do. Um, and big companies are not good at that. Small companies are, as everybody's different, right? So my personality is such that I like the incubation and commercialization side of it. I think I'm pretty good at it. Um, and that's the part, that's the juice. That's the stuff that actually like, is exciting. I think all these products, Reclaim Protect, could be a business onto its own. Reklaim Rewards could be a business on its own. Jackpot could be a business on its own. Shares for Invest could be a business on its own. They might all become businesses on their own. Like Reclaim was created in the last business and that got spun out as a business on its own. That business that we sold, Freckle, was a business in its predecessor that got spun out, and that business was a predecessor in its business. So like there's a Russian/Ukrainian doll type scenario here where when you're working in any business, whether it's this or washing machines, better than anybody else kind of where the industry is going and
And
where.
what's the business what's the industry that you know better or you know extremely well that you've been in for a long time?
Well, advertising, data, and technology for sure. Like this is like we're getting up to kind of 25 years here. So yeah, I'd like to believe that that you take those various different experiences, building both public and private companies, scaling and exiting these companies. I think like we have a lot of subject matter expertise as to kind of how to do these things. And like, look, to be candid, I was a terrible public market CEO when I first started as a public market CEO because I acted like a private market CEO, and that's like they're totally different. I was intrigued about the public market for a couple of reasons. One is I hadn't done it, so I wanted to do it. And then secondly, it's the arena where all the big boys are, and that's where I wanted in, right? Everybody says the best CEOs are in the public market. I'm like, I want in. That's it. I'm like, I want in and I want to compete. And like that was sort of the idea. So um the public market is great for that because it's basically it's the arena. It's the arena. And when you're in the arena, it's the disciplined and the strong survive in there. And I like it. I like that. I like that type of environment.
This is the kind of CEO. This is the kind of that I want to be. This is the jockey that I want to be betting on, right? I mean, I don't know how. I mean, we were just talking about before we hopped on. I've known you a long time. I've been in your stock for a long time. I never give you a hard time about your stock price because I'm not. I was not looking at what you had back when I met you. I was looking at where you're potentially going, and I have always thought you're a very forward-looking individual, right? So I wanted to keep an eye on what you were doing, and I wanted to get to know you better, right? And I feel I've done that, and I feel I feel you have that thing that I knew you were at some point going to come up with. I think it's like right there, and I'm getting really excited because I think it could be. I think it could be a grand slam, man. That's how I feel, right? I
Yeah,
think
I mean, look, I'm biased, so I agree, I tend to agree, but I think um yeah, I mean, this to me, and I know we sort of mentioned it, like this is sort of the sequel, right? Like this is the next version of Reclaim. The existing version that we've been running publicly and have driven that business and made it profitable has been kind of the original movie. And now we're starting to be like, well, what's the sequel? And the sequel is rewards, protect, invest, jackpot. And so um yeah, we'll see how this goes. I think sometimes the sequel is better than the original. Like Empire Strikes Back was better than the original, was it not?
let's talk about the privacy issues real quick. Just hit on them real. I know you got to go, but as the industry, and you're very active, you're very vocal. If you're on LinkedIn, Neil Sweeney is a good one to follow on LinkedIn. But you also put out your shareholder letters. I mean, very in-depth guy, right? And you got your finger on the pulse of what is happening with privacy in general. And there's a lot of changes happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there's I think the intention here is that one, you have this trillion-dollar data business today that is really powered by various different companies that are using data as a kind of free input. So that's how it's become a trillion-dollar business. That's changing. I think what's kind of happening now is that you've got a couple of other things. People are obviously realizing that data is inherently valuable. Just ask OpenAI and Gemini, et cetera, right? Like AI trains on what? Data. And so it's consuming the entire internet today, which it already has consumed the internet today. The question then becomes, and like this is a larger conversation. It's almost like a virus, and that AI is consuming the data from the open internet to train it to prevent consumers from going to the open internet, thereby starving the open internet. That sounds like a virus. The open internet then ceases to exist as we actually know it. The question then becomes, in order for AI as a virus to actually evolve, what does it need to train on? More data. Where are they going to get it? Because the open internet's gone. They're going to come very quickly towards the individual consumer and look to the personal data to actually get to the next level. And so you take that kind of theme and that, data is the oxygen basically of everything that we're working on. And then you combine AI with security and like, look, you had 730 million data breaches in 2023.
And
Meaning,
that number exploded. I mean, it has exploded, right?
yeah, you went from the number of accounts in 2023 being like 730 million to over 5.5 billion in 2024, which means, to give you some context, there's 180 accounts being compromised every second, right? And I think like if you want to really kind of get a handle on this, is that like we always talk about passwords and like, AI can crack a 6-character password in less than 6 seconds. So, like, what does this mean? So use that thing that I mentioned before. What it means is that if AI can crack a 6-digit password in less than 6 seconds, and that the number of breaches are expanding. They're expanding because people inherently know that the data is valuable. So there's an incentive to get more access to data. And if you can use AI to actually get access to more data, it means that all of the data, all of it, that is sitting behind these weak security, it's all going to be exposed here in the next kind of 12 months. It's all going to get hacked because the ability for individuals to stay kind of, on the cutting edge of where security is going is limited. So, the thing that always pisses me off about kind of data breaches is that, AT&T or T-Mobile get like hacked once a quarter, and then they like, oh, we're sorry, we got hacked. The 180 million people that are in the hack, what, you get 6 months of like free access to like
Aquarium.
TransUnion? I'm like,
Yeah.
who cares? The point is that your phone number, your email address, your social security number is sitting on the dark web in perpetuity, now being sold to anybody and everybody. Every data hack represents kind of more foundational information towards creating a kind of a fraud or a scam, right? So
Yeah.
every phone call that you get that is a spam call, which is increasingly being enhanced with AI, that data is coming from a broker and or a company that is selling that data either via a broker or off the dark web. So this is why removal of data is really important. The more, if your footprint is this big and we can shrink your footprint by, let's say, 10%, then your attack surface is reduced by 10% or 20% or 50% or 75%. And so that's just math, right? Like if you shrink your surface, your attack surface, then you're going to get less of that. And so the point here is there has to be kind of this proactive movement amongst individual consumers to protect their data, to remove their data, to play offense on this. And you could argue in the past that maybe it wasn't as big of a deal, but now with like AI and security and hacking kind of now on steroids, there I don't see anybody being able to just be like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to let all my data go anywhere. Like that's just not going to happen. I feel like there's going to be increasingly a movement of I need to be constantly staying on top of like who has my data, who am I sharing it with, where am I removing it from, who am I giving access to. So some of these things that we're doing, like the whole philosophy about Reklaim is to try to give these types of tools to consumers, give you access to data, give you these tools, and let you as a consumer decide how you want to do it. That's kind of the idea.
Yep. And I think this will become a more appreciated story and idea as these breaches and stuff continue to happen, right? So,
For sure.
all
Well,
right,
I
Neil.
appreciate you having me on. It's nice to talk with the group.
Yep. Listen, man. I think you're onto some really exciting stuff. We'll maybe what we should do is come back after the end of June.
Yeah, that'd be good for sure. After the end of June, we'll definitely have some updates on all these various different products. And like every month here feels like a year. So like when we talk about June, you'll be like, wait a minute. Like we just talked like a week, we just talked 4 weeks ago. So yeah, let's make a point of doing that for sure.
Okay, Neil, I appreciate you taking the time, man. You feel as though I got everything, though? I covered everything?
Yep.
Okay. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to shut this off. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here. Today we had Neil Sweeney from Reklaim, ticker symbol MYIDF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscriber button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Till next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.